Hello. Just testing audio.
Yes, Martin, we can hear you loud and clear.
Good.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this afternoon webinar. I'm going to introduce, my name is Geraldine Mugumya. I work as a risk analyst at NITA Uganda. And I would like to introduce our moderator for this session, Ms. Angela Tugume. She is a cybersecurity expert with 15 years experience and is currently working as the manager data protection affairs at the Personal Data Protection Office under NITA. Angela supports the provision of relevant regulatory guidance, information, and guidance to organizations and individuals in line with the Data Protection and Privacy Act 2019. Angela formerly worked as a risk analyst at NITA, where she was a key driver in driving effective risk management across all different government agencies. Angela is also the current president for ISC2 Uganda chapter, which is an international and non-profit membership association for information security leaders whose provision is to inspire a safe and secure cyber world. I'd like now to invite Angela to take over.
Thank you so much, Geraldine. It's a pleasure to be here. And to all our attendees and participants and panelists, thank you so much for joining us today. So I'll just give us a preamble or a brief or set the stage for today's webinar. NITA is holding this year's e-Government Excellency Awards under the theme, Bold Digital Government, Embracing Disruptive Technologies. The main drive of the awards is to highlight the advancements in e-government services in Uganda. The awards activities include the e-government masterclasses. Then the masterclasses create a platform to share experiences and bring together all players to reflect on the current and future state of e-services. Today, we are discussing driving digital transformation, paper to execution. So welcome our participants. We are glad that you have joined us online. Feel free to send through your questions and inquiries using the Q&A option. We are also streaming live on the NITA YouTube page. You can share this link with all your friends, and also you can leave your comments on the YouTube link. We'll be able to respond to them. So today, join me in welcoming our panelists. We have Mr. Peter Wasenda from the Uganda Revenue Authority. Peter, if you're online, you could switch on your video and say a quick hi as I read out your bio as well.
Hi, Angela.
Hi, Peter. Welcome to this webinar. Good to see you online. Peter is an IT professional with over 19 years experience in the industry. He has been variously engaged to provide technical and strategic advisory services to the public and private organizations. So for 10 years, Peter led the IT security team at the Uganda Revenue Authority, where he masterminded the establishment and consolidation of the information security architecture at the Uganda Revenue Authority. He was also instrumental in envisioning the future information technology strategy aimed at providing a seamless service to taxpayers and stakeholders. Peter is currently the acting commissioner for ICT and innovation, IT, at the URA, and he's charged with overseeing the organization's research and innovation, business process management, and IT service operations. Peter holds a bachelor's degree in computer science from Makerere University, together with so many other several certifications. Peter, we are so happy and excited to have you on today's panel, and we're looking forward to hearing insights from you on how you've actually transformed URA to be the kind of authority organization that it is right now. So welcome to the panel once again.
Thank you.
Members, help me welcome Martin Sekaja from the Kampala City Council Authority. Martin, you're very welcome to this webinar today. If you could just say a quick hello to our attendees as well as I read out your bio. Okay.
Martin, you're on mute. You're muted.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. I'm happy to be here. A small correction, it's Kampala Capital City Authority, Angela.
Kampala Capital City Authority, perfect, got it. Yes, so Martin is the head of information technology at Kampala Capital City Authority. I had missed the capital again, Martin. I know there are so many cities, so we have to be sure that Kampala is the capital city. So that is corrected. So he has worked with the KCCA since 2011, and he previously worked with URA, Uganda Revenue Authority, and Makerere University. Now, Martin has vast experience working with international agencies such as UNDP, World Bank, AFD, and international networks, such as Africa Smart Cities Network, World Smart and Sustainable Cities Organization, the Global Smart Cities Alliance, and the Smart Cities World. Martin holds an executive master's degree in business administration from the East and South African Management Institute, Tanzania, and a Bachelor of Science in Information Technology from Makerere University. He has certified in various leadership and technology courses, both locally and globally. Martin has quite a number of achievements to his name, very many notable achievements to his name. And I like this one where you're the chairman of the Kampala Capital City Authority Football Club. I wonder if you play football and you know which position you play, but yeah, you let us know. So that's very interesting and encouraging. I didn't know that about you. And Martin has also won a Silver Award for Best Cooperative Smart City by WIGO in 2017. And then also among the so many notable achievements is a certificate of appreciation for chairing and transforming the KCCA staff circle. He's also been a country project manager for Africa Smart Cities Network by French Development Agency. That was in 2019. And he's also currently the executive committee member of the World Smart and Sustainable Cities, an advisory board member of the Smart Cities World, and also an advisory board member of SEMA. Martin, thank you so much for joining us today. And we are looking forward to learning and to listening to how you have transformed the different fields that you have worked with, including football. I hope in this. And then welcome with me, Stephen Chisuze from the National Medical Stores. Stephen, you're very welcome to this call, to this webinar. You could just say a brief hello to our attendees.
Thank you, Angela, and eminent panelists and all our listeners here for inviting me to be part of this discussion. And we hope to, enjoy the sharing of experiences.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Thank you so much. So Stephen is currently the Chief ICT Officer at the National Medical Stores, where he is instrumental in supporting the board and management in the governance of IT. He executes the corporation strategy and manages the day-to-day operations of the IT function. Stephen has expertise in information technology and management. He's a graduate of science, mathematics, and physics, and holds a postgraduate qualification in IT, business administration, and of course, the various certifications that come within the industry. Stephen currently leads a very diverse team at NMS that is currently implementing the ERP system. And this ERP system is aimed at transforming the health supply chain of essential medicines and health supplies from end to end. That's from the stores to the last customer, right, Stephen? Yes, and also they're currently replacing all the legacy systems by digitizing and re-engineering all the business processes. And of course, this comes with enhancing customer experience. Stephen is also a trained instructor of chess. That I didn't know about you, Stephen. That's interesting to know as well, which is good. And you're also, or you're an instructor, and you're also the chairman of the Commission of Africa Chess Confederation, right? Thank you so much for joining us, Stephen, and we'll be looking forward to listening from you and to how you have transformed the National Medical Stores into what it is today in terms of digital transformation. And last but not least is Florence Nachene from the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development. Florence, we are so excited to have you on this webinar today. If you may just say a quick hello to our attendees, that would be very nice.
Good afternoon to all our attendees. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you so much, Florence. So I'll just introduce Florence to us. Florence is an IT professional with over 17 years experience, acquired from project management, both in the private and government projects, including banking, microfinance, and education, as well as the judicial sectors. During her career, Florence has worked with a Pride Microfinance Limited, Yuga Ford Microfinance Limited, Finance Trust Bank, and Government of Uganda under NITAU and Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development. Now, Florence served in different roles ranging from IT officer, assistant IT manager, manager IT system and services, and project manager in government procurement, a position that she holds currently. Florence has cutting-edge leadership in project management, interpersonal and conceptual skills, where she has been able to lead the government of Uganda through the development of the e-government procurement system, which happens to be the largest public financial management system that is homegrown, BUBU, Build Uganda, by Uganda, Build Uganda. So this system is currently deployed in 12 entities, and the rollout has commenced this financial year, 2021. 2022. Key on Florence's agenda is enhancing security, functionality, sustainability of this system to be able to provide the value addition needed in public procurement. Florence, thank you so much for joining us today. And I'll ask attendees to put a comment if they've heard about EGP and what that will mean for government procurements for any of the attendees. So Florence, I'll just begin with you. Now, we know that every organization, from your experience as a project manager of in various organizations, we know that every organization has a strategic plan that drives their service delivery. But we also know that it's one thing to have a plan, and it's entirely a different thing to execute that plan and have that plan deliver the kind of results that you'd have it deliver. So in your vast experience, what has been your experience in driving the digital agenda in your organization? We could talk about EGP, but also from your previous experience, and then also in which areas is ICT enabled e-service delivery? And also, if you could just take us through that, your experience in driving digital delivery in your organization, and in that experience, where does ICT enabled e-service delivery come in strongly? Florence, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Angela, for that question. I think first I'll start by thanking NITAU, of course, for this this opportunity, but also going straight to the question on my experience in driving the digital within the ministry. First and foremost, I do work with the Ministry of Finance as, of course, my immediate employer, but I work very closely with the National IT Authority. I work very closely with the Ministry of ICT and National Guidance, and I also work very closely with the Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Assets Authority. So first and foremost, I really want to first focus on the EGP because it's what I've put a lot of my effort in for the last 4 years. And my experience really has been an interesting one. You know, usually when you're coming from private sector, yes, the planning is one thing, the execution is another. However, because private sector attaches a lot of profitability to the execution of their plans, you'll find that most of the time, timeliness in execution is very important, because that execution always has a business aspect that has been attached to it, and definitely there are results that are expected to drive the business and move the institution forward. So fast forward into government. My experience really has shown or taught me a couple of things. That for starters, over and above the planning process, it's important to have a needs gap analysis. Because if you do not establish the compelling reason why you actually want to drive this digital agenda within an entity, case an example, I'll use Ministry of Finance for my sake, or for my case. If you've not done a needs gap analysis to establish why you're doing this, then it is almost next to very possible that you might fall off the train along the way. Why? Because there are a couple of things that come into play. Case an example for e-government procurement system, there was need to do a change readiness assessment. And the reason we needed to do this is because, one, of course, we all know procurement has a lot of legalities attached to it. So it was important to establish, is the environment ready for e-government procurement? And if it is ready for e-government procurement, do we have the kind of technology that we need to actually go e-government procurement? Now, when you do the needs gap analysis, of course, you quickly drive into the system requirement specifications, which should help you ascertain what is it that you need to do. Now, key for us on the EGP team is that we had to make sure that the basis of this system is the law. So whatever is done there has to be based on the PPDA law. Having done that, then of course, now we had to dive into the governance structures. Like I told you, the e-government procurement project doesn't only sit with the Ministry of Finance, it sits with the Ministry of ICT, the National IT Authority, the PPDA also. Now, each of them has a clearly defined role on this project, and it was very important that the governance structure be established. Why? Because if you do not have clearly mapped out roles for a system like e-government procurement that has a vast number of users and vast categories of stakeholders, it would, you'd end up stepping on each other's toes. So it was important, and it's always very important that you iron out your governance structure so you know exactly how to do the execution of this project. But maybe lastly on that was over and above the governance structure, of course, having the right team in place, but also having your stakeholders clearly mapped out. Because for my case, I have about 10 categories of stakeholders. It was very important that I actually get to know my stakeholders. Why? Because this has the way I relate to them and the way I get them involved in the different aspects of the system implementation has a direct impact on the adoption. Because at the end of the day, I need to drive the awareness within them. I need to drive the desire for them to use the system, the knowledge on the system, the ability for them to use the system, and reinforcement to take care of any resistance that could come with the implementation of the reform. So it was very important that I had my stakeholders clearly mapped out. In summary, it's been a journey. It's been a long journey. I have learned, of course, a couple of things. Like I mentioned, there seems to be some kind of distinction between the way private practice handles it and the way government handles projects. But I'm glad that we've actually been able to get to the end of the road. Angela, over to you.
Wow, Florence, thank you so much for sharing your experience. And as you actually shared your experience, one of the key things that came out was the fact that you cannot do digital transformation without actually transforming the business. And in the process of transforming the business, you have to look at the gap analysis, you have to look at the governance structures, and you also need to map out your stakeholders. And I think in your case, it's been like this plus exponentially by maybe 5, because you're dealing with the entire government with different agencies, ministries, departments. So it's been bigger than you would have in a single entity. Wow, that really comes out well. I'll be asking you more later in the webinar, how that has really, what impact that has had so far, and also what the future will look like. So thank you so much for sharing your insights. If I may move on to Martin. Martin, I'd like to know your experience in driving the digital agenda in your organization and how that has impacted service delivery in your organization.
Well, thank you so much, Angela, and dear viewers. I'll focus on Kampala Capital City Authority. KCCA has a day population of about 1.6 million, 4 million people, and a night population of 1.65, according to the stats we have. The city also has about, the biggest percentage of this population is youth, comprising 90%. That means that those are 40 years and below. And so that has a big bearing on how we plan for the city and knowing what our citizens do need. Of course, our vision is to be sustainable, to be attractive, to be vibrant, attractive, and sustainable in the long run. My experience has been looking at what the nature of institution that we have. It's sort of a mini government. It has so many directorates that report to various ministries. For example, you'll see that we have a directorate of revenue collection, for revenue, treasury, for, we have health, education, we have infrastructure, which could be reporting to, in one way or the other, has to harmonize with Ministry of Works. So it is a very diverse institution, and implementing technology has got to do with what you prioritize most. So when since 2011, our strategy was to focus on our use on a 2080 rule, where we had the biggest impact. We knew that all these services the city offers do require financing, so we needed to find a way of improving our finances. At the time, our collections were manual, but we've since automated most of the processes in revenue to be fully automated, which improved our revenue collection by over 300%. And we still have potential to improve this to about 600%. A case in example is that, for example, was during the COVID lockdown, a lot of businesses were closed, and that Kampala was greatly affected. All shops were closed, but we still managed to collect 98% of the revenue target. So that implies that people were able to transact electronically, even when they were not able to come to the city. Of course, for the city, a lot of our objectives in the strategy are citizen-oriented. So we need to put what they do need at the forefront, and that includes infrastructure. So we did have to consider the infrastructure requirements of the city, looking at the roads. We needed to have a roads inventory, the status of roads, which ones were due for upgrade. So we do have a road management system that gives us a detailed analysis of roads infrastructure in the city, knowing which ones are due for maintenance, knowing which ones are due for the next kind of investment. That informs our investment in terms of infrastructure improvement. Of course, the city offers health services and education as well. So in our infrastructure connectivity plan, we've been working very closely with NITAYU. Our first roadmap was to ensure that all KCCA and most of the installations in the city are well connected and can serve the purpose and interests of the city. So we looked at we have connected a number of them using very reliable connectivity, private and government. The private, we are talking about point to multi-point. We have a private network within the city that helps us to communicate high bandwidth We have connected most of the big hospitals, Mulago, Chirudu, Kawempe, and all those hospitals. And of course, they'll be having information sharing for the benefit of our patients that visit these hospitals. The plan is to roll out to all the hospitals in the city, but we also rolled out to the health center force. Of course, for schools, we have this in plan, looking at how COVID has affected the city. This is an area that we need to give a lot of attention. In other public services, in health services, we had an emergency solution. You see, the city is very, very dynamic, and it does require you to provide solutions that address the current and future needs. So during COVID, we had to come up with an emergency plan where we helped over 2,000 patients using our emergency system. That included COVID, maternal, and everyone, because travel was restricted. So by and large, we have quite a number of projects that I could hardly explain in the 10 minutes, but the experience that I've had over a number of these projects that we are implementing, some of them are artificial intelligence projects, like, air pollution monitoring, street lighting. So they help us to manage a number of these. So the experience I've had is that, number one, start with the cost-effective solutions or tools. When we first came, of course, we had to look at the ones where we don't have to invest a lot of money. Most of the citizens need information, so use the social media practically to help you address the issues and get all these feedback mechanisms. Of course, also set up the basics, start with the basics, put the necessary gadgets in place, infrastructure, internet, communications, like I've been highlighting. The other is to to lease out the operational activities, issues to do with the toner, printing, lease that out to the people that do it best. So it was important that we kept that up of our operations. And of course, bringing top management on board, and also making sure that IT sits on the table, that it makes decisions for the city, both at political level and at technical level. So that has been very, very helpful. Of course, training and capacity building of both the technical people, the public, on a number of on adoption of technology. The other, of course, lesson in what we've been implementing is identify a small sample of change agents and use them effectively. For instance, when we're doing projects with public transport, we have a lot of these public transport people on board. The Utrada, those small groups, the border associations. If you're rolling out a mobility project, you need to start with a sample group that will change and help others. Of course, empowering the organization to also innovate. Given the nature of our organization, it's so heterogeneous in nature, you can't have knowledge in all the areas. So what you do, you look for people that can help you innovate in some of the areas. For instance, that emergency app and system was with the support of our internal staff in the public health that we supported in technically wherever we had, but a lot of the innovations are coming from them. The waste collection and pit emptying, which helps improve health services, also is mainly driven by the health staff and others. Of course, in our experience, we've learned that people keep changing on projects, and it is important to plan for that by having very strong governance structures. The last lesson also from my experience is learning to collaborate with others. Know what everyone out there is doing so that you do not waste effort on that. When we knew about the e-government procurement, we had actually we had it in our work plan because it is one of the areas that affected our clients. But we moved to PPDA, discussed, and it let us know that this was coming, and we were happy to send a team to be part of the technical and the input. So, and to be a pilot site. So we've learned to be to collaborate with others, with NITAU, whenever we've had to work with them, the Minister of ICT and others. So it's also a lesson So there's quite a lot, and we do have a lot in store to plan. Precisely, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Martin. And I'd like to draw in one very critical thing that you mentioned, and I think that applies to everything that we do as individuals, the 20-80% rule. Concentrate 20% of your efforts where you actually get 80% impact. And that is very, very critical. And thank you so much for sharing that insight. And as you discussed, I noted that also among the very many things, customer insight is very essential as you go digital. Why? Because you mentioned that you actually reach out to your population to actually get feedback from them. And that's very encouraging, because then it will mean that there's going to be a lot of continuous improvement and that the product actually meets the customer target. And I think what really works for you, Martin, is the fact that you have a young population, 40 years and below. These are the early adopters of technology, which I believe is working very well in your favor. I was going to ask you how AI is playing in all this, and then you actually mentioned it, the fact that you're using AI, and I think in the future, this is one of the things that is going to be at the front and center of every digital transformation that we see in the country. Martin, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us. Of course, not forgetting the fact that you need a connectivity to be able to drive the digital in your constituency and make sure that everyone is connected and has access to that platform. And I was very intrigued by the fact that you managed to maintain your revenue targets because of the fact that you have gone digital in terms of collecting your revenue. And that's very, very commendable. While other companies were struggling, the Capital City Authority was, exceeding and excelling. Thank you so much, Martin, for those insights. And I think now I'll move on to National Medical Stores. And I'll also like to know your experience, Stephen. What has your experience been in driving the digital in your organization? Because I know you serve actually the entire country and you have so many stakeholders in all this. So would like to know, what has your experience been like, and how have you managed to enable service delivery that is satisfactory to your clients, to your customers, to your stakeholders? Stephen, over to you, if you may unmute.
Thank you, Angela. Just like my colleagues, our experience has also been quite, a handful. I will just go back to 2008 and 9 or thereabouts, because that's where really our transformation starts in a modest way. And at that point in time, we had a lot of challenges, very low inertia in the whole, system that or sector that we work in terms of, IT. And you can say the tendency to do nothing was much more than you can describe. We didn't have the sort of leadership in the sector that you would rely on to push any digitization process. There was a lot of doubtfulness about the potential for success. You couldn't, go to the people and tell them that we want to do this, and this is how it aligns with our strategy, and it will work. Everybody would doubt you. So you had to grow belief among the people in ourselves and take on, the mantle. Then we also had a lot of cynicism. You would find so many skeptics who were not sure that things will work. Self-interests, interfering with what would be noble. So there was need to build awareness, change management. And then we also had this very bad image, especially within our sector, but also where we intersect with other sectors. NMS, like most of you may have heard, was associated with expiries, drug theft, and all the other things that you really don't want to talk about in such a discussion. Then we also had limited budget, limited resources, which really, if you needed to share them, how would you allocate what would be considered adequate for you to drive any realistic digital agenda? That was also one of the challenges. Then in terms of our core mandate as NMS, we didn't have space to store all the medicines we would store if we're operating at even quarter of our capacity. The staff involved were few. I think we had just about 200 staff. Right now we are about double that number. The trucks we were relying on to deliver were quite old. They would break down even before they reach Kampala from Entebbe. And then we also didn't have enterprise systems. So we had to, maneuver all that, and management and our seniors came up with interventions which we have implemented over those years. And those have seen us grow. I already talked about the staff. We've gone to double that number. Our turnover moved from 70 billion. You imagine 70 billion for the whole country's medicines, to now over 500 billion funded by government. And then the balance that makes it 1.2 billion are funded with the development partners. Then we have worked with these partners to make sure that we've embarked on a digitization process of our supply chain. And this has helped us to grow our transparency, our accountability, efficiencies at NMS have improved greatly. We're able to account. We are, without sounding like bragging, we are one of the best performing entities. If you go to Auditor General's reports, you go to PPDA, we always rank. If we are not the top 3, then that area is not assessed. So we always feature in that category. Then we have also embarked on an internal efficiency and innovation drive, whereby all our processes, I would say, currently digitized or within the course of being digitized. And we do this while collaborating with our partners, so that where we can't meet the funding, the technical expertise required, we can engage on we leverage their capacity to, deliver our solutions or our strategy. But the main things that have been drivers, I would say, over these years is that NMS is very, very strong on strategic planning. Our strategy for a good number of years is always rooted directly to the national plans where they exist. So our plans usually cut across different sectors, but whatever is required in terms of alignment, usually find it very, very well elaborated in our strategic plan. And our senior management is well, oiled at all times to implement those plans. So like the current NDP, we align to the program of human capital development and the sub-program of population health, safety, and management. And basically the whole aim in what we do is to try and improve the quality of life for all Ugandans. Our corporate plan is about 2 years old, and it's fully aligned to the National Development Plan 3. We also take note that within that plan, there are also important programs, but one important one that I learned today morning was the one of mindset change, which is program 13. And this is one that plays well with the change management that is required to drive a digital agenda within the sector. And we realize that we have been doing a lot of that at NMS without actually being cautious even before this plan came in place, because change management has been quite key. But other interventions in relation to strategic planning, we have very good communication, goal setting. We do annual action plans, and we assess or report on them at the level of senior management to the board every quarter, and more frequently at the level of management. So therefore, we also have an internal system to track the implementation of our strategic initiatives through a designated desk that is our chief whip in that regard. We also do our performance management in alignment with the strategy. And you see that all these digitization efforts are in there when you look through the digitization agenda. So the broad way of ensuring that digitization has been successful at NMS is explained by our strong governance of IT system. It is grounded in standards. We have a quality management system for ISO. And then we also borrowed a lot of elements from COVID, especially COVID-19 and change management. And these have enabled NMS to establish guidelines to implement, monitor, and improve technology governance at all levels, right from the board. You imagine I go to the board and I'm asked questions on whether all the intended outcomes have been achieved. And what used to be very difficult in the early days is now common questions, and a lot of board members at our level, at NMS, can tell you quite a lot about what we are doing. So we've managed to focus all our IT services at an operational level and align them to strategy. And we have, that top-down, approach is quite effective. Then we have, of course, the goals, which are now quite well aligned, and they are seamlessly embedded into our corporate plan. So from my view, the experience is largely driven by the way the strategic direction of NMS has been governed. And I think that explains the success that we have achieved thus far. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Stephen. And indeed, NMS has come from far. And of course, customer expectations continue to rise for NMS. I totally identify with the stories of drugs expiring. Actually, when in my earlier days, when you mentioned NMS, I was like, expired drugs. That was the brand that you had gained for yourself. But as you've continued to improve, also the customer expectations have continued to rise for you as NMS, as an organization. So we're looking forward to bigger and better. And, as you mentioned, the very many issues or challenges or problems that you had as NMS, from poor leadership to cynicism, to the poor image, to the limited budget and resources. I was actually smiling because I am very sure that for the many attendees in our audience, if you have experienced any of these challenges in your digital agenda, raise your hands or keep the conversation going by chatting, putting in the chat room, what are those challenges that you have experienced in your own organization? Even as you listen to Stephen, tell us the challenges that they faced as their organization. Tell us, what is it that you're facing in your organization? Because I'm very sure many of you on this call are actually on your digital journey, have, are somewhere at various levels, various degrees. So just keep the conversation going. Tell us, what are those challenges that you have faced and how are you overcoming them? And also, what are those things, what are those nuggets that you're learning from our panelists today? Put them in the chat. Let's keep this conversation going. Thank you. Stephen, I like the fact that you emphasized commitment from your governance structures, from your board at National Medical Stores. And I think this is the key success ingredient for any digital transformation to take place within an organization. Because remember, we have to first transform the business. Thank you so much, Stephen, for being candid with us today. And participants, I'm really looking forward to reading some of your comments of the challenges that you have faced so far in your digital agenda. Thank you so much, Stephen, and for sharing those comments. Okay, so next I'll move on to Peter. Peter, you're very welcome to this panel once again. And what many of you don't know is that Peter was one of the very first professional mentors that I had right out of campus. So each time I'm like, oh, Peter, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. I really personally gained a lot from you, Peter. And so would like to hear your experience in what has it been like in driving the digital agenda in your organization, your experience, the challenges, and also as you mention those challenges, give us a sneak peek into the impact so far and what the future looks like. Peter, over to you.
Hope you can hear me.
Oh yes, loud and clear.
Thank you, Angela, and thank you, my fellow panelists. I can see Martin, my friend there, and nice to meet the rest of you. I wouldn't say I've single-handedly shifted URA from where it was to where it is. There's a whole team, a big team here that does all the work. I'm privileged to be part of the team, and just a brief background about where URA started. It started before I joined, sometime around 1991, and there's little that went on in the first decade, 1991 to 2000. Just a few, what can I say, automated solutions and internal development works, but the systems or the solutions that we saw, that transformation that we started to see started happening around between 2001 and 2010, after an evaluation done by a certain donor. And we, of course, at the time we had taxpayers, they had to go to different stations. We didn't have connectivity between the different stations. So we had a one setup, a wide area network. We revamped our data center. I remember we had so many cables. We had, let's say, different service providers, each of them connecting to our data center. And so we had to get rid of that kind of thing and have a professional data center set up around 2007, 2008. And around that time, 2009 is when we introduced the ATAX. And that's where we started to see the real value of technology. In some cases, some operations reduced from 3 weeks to 2 days. We simplified online payments, made it easier for our clients to ascertain their tax position, because now we had a central data repository for all information about our taxpayers. And so that's when we started to see the real value of technology. And so for this past decade, from 2011 up to now, our focus has been to try and consolidate the gains that we made in the earlier periods. We have come to start using data. For example, we used not to know, people used to submit lots of information to us. Data became like a burden to us, but then we realized that we could make connections between, let's say, Martin and someone else. And so we have seen many successes on that front that were previously hidden just right before our eyes. And so, of course, there have been many challenges along the way. For example, one key thing that's really hit us hard over the years is because the key solutions that we use, like the ATAX, have been externally sourced by a vendor from India. And he developed this thing. We did negotiate for the source code because we thought it was too expensive, but we paid the price because the system was built. And somehow, every time we need to make a change, we need to go back to him. So it wasn't built in a configurable way. And so configurability for us is now a very key thing. Every system that we have has to be configurable, as in we can make that change ourselves internally. Our teams have to be empowered to make the changes. And also that helps us reduce on the cost of the solutions that we use. Of course, there has to be a clear focus on value delivery. What we set out to do on the outset, have we actually achieved it? Are we on the right path? We keep on trying to measure ourselves and seeing whether we're actually on the right path. And it's important, we have seen, to keep an eye on the future. It looks like people never have enough. I mean, once you achieve something and give them something, they'll always ask for more. We've been a few years, so it's good to keep an eye on the future and see, you know what will I need in the next few years? How do I need to build this platform or this system to prepare for the next few years? So we keep on doing continuous research on the new thing out there so that we can change. I cannot say we're perfect. In some cases, I personally get amazed when I see people doing things better than us. I mean, it's a good thing, but we're challenged. You know, it's not easy sometimes to turn a big ship, turning left or right, because there's so many rules, so many regulations, but you have to follow them anyway. And so another key thing we found is it's good to have, like previous speakers have spoken, proper planning. Because if you have something, an intervention that you're going to, let's say, put in place now today, make sure every dependency is taken care of to the best extent possible. I mean, you cannot have everything in mind, but at least do the best you can. Change management has been a really key thing for us. We are, of course, deal with tax collection, which is an unpopular product. No one wants to release money. And so making things as simple as possible, removing every kind of hurdle is important to us. And so change management to drive adoption. Because of the kind of operation that we have, it's quite complex, I would say. We run a transactional system where both that invites stakeholders both in the country and out of the country, and so there are so many demands on us in terms of uptime, in terms of how we respond to our clients, and so standardization of our service offering has become a very, very key thing for us. We work in a very dynamic environment. There's so many moving parts. People are changing things here and there. So if you lose track of things, let's say someone will change something, before you know it, someone like Martin has done some bad things on your system, bypass some process, and embarrassing us. Image is very important to us, and so standardization is very important to us to avoid things going haywire, to avoid losing control of the environment. We value the partnerships that we have with our key stakeholders, because we cannot work in isolation. There's information that we need that is out there in KCCA, in NERA, in National Water, and even internationally, that information about Martin's foreign account. Sorry, I use Martin because I used to work with him, and he knows why. And so all this information coming into one place, you need to have, let's say, data standards. Some people will not share information with you if you don't have certain regulations in place. You need to have the capacity to process that data, to store it, to analyze it, all that kind of thing around data. And so standardization of our data governance is quite important for us. Internally, we're also realizing that we need to have a detailed view, a detailed instrumentation of our services, because we need to understand how the systems are performing to that detail. Without that, it becomes very, very difficult to manage and act on something that is not performing as it should. And so instrumentation of our services is very, very vital to us. And so what are some of the challenges? I mentioned one already. There's one of costs, a cost of technology. We do not develop much of the technology that we have here. We buy much of it from companies in the US, for example, companies out there, and so they have different distributorships, and so these different guys add their cost onto that, and so the cost of technology can really go high. We're trying to find ways of managing that. Of course, NITA is helping us with Microsoft deals, and I wish they could help us with more, like Oracle, because the cost of Oracle is really high. So cost of technology has been a challenge for us. We have to move at the cadence of the technology industry. You buy something today, within the next 5 years, they're saying it's obsolete, and they will not support you. And so you have to change. It's a really big challenge for us. Of course, that means we also have to continually train our teams to make sure they're up to date with the latest technologies. We have this issue of staff who gets to do very good things. They come here. Of course, people are empowered in your area. We empower our staff to do things by themselves without depending so much on external effort. And so we have quite a bit of high staff turnover. Doesn't happen so frequently, but when it happens, it can really hit us bad, because you get some key person managing some key system, and it just leaves you that's right there. We see a differing level of capability of technology across government, and that impacts our operations, because we have to move. We have these targets. We're given targets. We are supposed to collect this revenue, and we have to move. And so this thing of differing level of capability across government really hurts us, our operations. Yeah, that's what I can share for now. Thank you, Angela.
Peter, thank you so much for sharing with us. I'll be asking you a later bit on, if we still have more time, on what the future looks like from your perspective as the tax collector in this case, but also as, you know, a professional. And one of the things that came out as in your discussion is the fact that the cost of digital, the cost of going digital, the cost of the entire implementing the entire digital agenda can sometimes be immense. And, you know, what can I say, a huge burden on the organizations that are trying to move that digital agenda. And key things that you mentioned there is actually the cost of the technology itself, that is quite high. And I think NITA is doing something in this regard, where we're looking for homegrown open source solutions, so that this cost can actually be driven a bit lower. And the very key thing that came out from your talk that I really wanted to emphasize is the fact that the solutions that we get must be configurable. You must be able to empower your organization, your staff, to be able to make whatever changes that they need to do without incurring more costs. And also the fact that when we look at having a complex environment, I think all environments are complex in their own way. But what comes out very key here is the fact that you need standardization. You need those SOPs, standard operating procedures. You mentioned the element of staff turnover. What happens? What do you do? How do you quickly, you know, get someone to replace staff that has left? And standardization plays a very key role in ensuring that actually this process is faster and is key. And even as you mentioned, one of the key elements that came out that really struck me was the fact that even as we go digital, we need to think business continuity in terms of staff, but also in terms of systems. Are those systems secured? What happens if you have a catastrophic event? Do you have a backup plan? Do you have a backout plan? You know, that's one of the things that also came out very clearly. And of course, the fact that you need to be forward thinking and you need to have continuous improvement on your services. I did mention earlier that customer expectations continue to rise, and you also really brought out this well. When you think you've done your best, customers come and say, but why don't you do it like this? Or we want something better, bigger, or bolder. So thank you so much, Peter, for sharing those thoughts. I'll move on to the questions that are in the Q&A. And we have a question in the Q&A that goes to Martin. Martin, what is your roadmap to score Kampala? I think it's what is your roadmap to score Kampala as a smart city? It's still a challenge in extension of ICT infrastructures like broadband, fiber, for affordable internet in the city. and the greater Kampala at large. What is KCCA doing to drive this, to make this a better rating? And then lastly, some time back, we had some modernization in border transport through Safe Border, Uber, and others. However, this trend seems to be ending with most of the riders going back to the stages. What is KCCA doing to sensitize these transporters, and is in terms of digital transport systems for operators for fare incentives and fare taxes? Martin, if you could take up that question in just a minute. Martin, are you there? Okay, so as Martin comes back on, or as he unmutes, we'll try and reach out to him. Okay, there he is.
Yes, thank you so much, Angela. The question is in having a digital roadmap for the smart city.
Yes.
This concept was way back, is old in Western world, but it's kind of just new on the African continent. So the measurement and parameters is subject to the interpretation of what each city, the manner in which each city implements its smart city program. Our earlier roadmap was focusing on putting the basic services out there for people to connect. I mean, to roll out, to putting out the basic services for citizens to access all services electronically. And we are at a stage where we need to streamline the governance of the smart city, bringing on board various government agencies. Yes, a lot of them are having systems which are electronic, but now we are coming to a stage of harmonizing and integrating. And I'm happy that NITAU has taken the lead on having the integration platform. But in terms of reorganization of the services in a manner that citizens would expect to have them, that one we need to sit as a various representatives of the government. So if we are to measure, at the moment, because of that, we measure low at the moment. But the good news is that there's now a framework that is under development world over to measure progress of the smart city, and that way we shall be able to give you to account and give you better ratings in terms of the citizen. But on the on the broadband again, we are working with NITAU to increase Wi-Fi connectivity in the city. As we speak, we had about 256 spots on Wi-Fi 5, and we do need to upgrade to Wi-Fi 6 in the city and 5G. I think that is some UCC needs to come on board here, trying to push the various providers to adhere to this requirement. So it takes the effort from everyone. The questions you asked a little bit broad. But coming back to the border transformation, yes, from the very beginning, we came up with a guideline that helped Safe Border to automate its operations, and it had very good benefits to the city administration. Well, the challenges that we do have with borders are not mainly technical. They are more administrative. And as we speak, our recommendations are at a cabinet level. And from there, we'll be able to implement the various technical solutions. They're already available. And when the time is due, we'll be able to, you'll see change in that industry. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Martin, for answering that question. I'll ask Florence to take the next question. And the question is, it's a great opportunity that all sectors are embracing technology and innovation, most especially in the pandemic. But what could be causing the challenge of limited sensitization and awareness implementation? Yet at the end of the day, these digital innovations are tailored to promote convenience to all stakeholders like the public? Florence, if you're there, you could take up this question, please.
Okay, thank you, Angela, for the question. So yes, it's a fact that a number of digital innovations have actually been done in government. And what is it that could actually be stopping the awareness of the awareness as regards these digital innovations is a shortfall in the kind of attachment we give to change management. Over time, people, and it's something I've actually experienced even on this project. Over time, people tend to think change management is obvious. I mean, the moment you put out a system or an innovation and people know what it's going to do, it's obvious that they're going to use this. Unfortunately, it's not, because what you're dealing with is hearts and minds. So change management is actually downplayed, and yet you can actually not separate change management from project management. The two have to go together. That is the only way you're actually going to drive the adoption of that system. But over and above the adoption of that system, that is the only way you'll also be able to drive the sustainability, because it's one thing to have an innovation in place. It's another thing to keep it in place.
Mm-hmm.
So if you ask me, I think it's been the downplay in the change management, but I think it is also something that we have also woken up to realize that we do need. Well, unfortunately, when it came to the pandemic, it happened. Nobody was ready. We were not ready for anything. But I want to believe that we've actually picked our lessons from this. And there are different ways that we can actually do the awareness through some of the different digital forums. Although I know that our people are traditionally inclined to workshops and seminars and all those face-to-face engagements, there are so many ways we can actually interact. I mean, look at this webinar where we are discussing, we're interacting, we can actually have change management and awareness over any digital platform that we do have in government. So one is the downplaying of the change management, which I think we have actually picked up on, but we need to embrace the different ways in which we can actually carry it out and not necessarily the face-to-face engagements. I think that is what I have.
Thank you so much, Florence. And I think one of these attendees goes on to say that we could actually partner with media companies like Vision Group, which I think is already being done. But you could you could type an answer to the attendee in the chat. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are time barred, but allow me go on for another 3 minutes so that we answer 2 more questions, and then we'll call it a day. So just 2 more questions. And this question goes to Stephen. Stephen, the question is, how have you managed to change from the previous normal, especially during the COVID, where we had to drag non-IT survey staff to adopt to the new normal of working remotely? I know this question is talking about working remotely, but it could also apply to your very many stakeholders that you're working with to introduce the digital agenda. So if you could address the question in 1 minute, Stephen, over to you, please. Okay, Stephen, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you,
Perfect.
Angela. Yeah, the issue is, of course, currently we have not NMS only, but all entities have been forced into the experiment of rapid digitalization due to COVID-19. And this has resulted in things like, allowing people to work from home, to increase reliance on use of social media, to engage video conferencing, using Teams, Google Meet, Zoom, WebEx, and all others. The digitalization of different workflows within the workplace. But you see, this rapid thing has been, the only impact it has is to be quite disruptive. And we just need to accept that and use it within our different frameworks to continue, executing our mandates in order to, serve the citizens better. So in terms of the question is that for these digital solutions or innovations we have made, we just have to accept that they will remain and they should form part of our future strategies, so that when people eventually return to work, or if they have to, citizens come to us, or different stakeholders come to us to engage, they realize that among the new normal would be to use digital means to access services. So this is something that we need to accept now and to embrace. So we basically therefore have to continue to adopt the tools that simplify digital workflows, focus specifically on those that help us to serve our stakeholders better and more effectively, and in terms of those who serve customers more efficiently, so that we cut down on red tape, improve efficiency, increase transparency. And those who have already invested in solutions even before, they should now start to think about enhancing their investments, for better service. That's how I could sum it up quickly.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Ladies and gentlemen, we are running out of our time. But before we do, there are certain pertinent questions that are in the Q&A. I'd request our staff from NITAU, Rowena, Emma, Geraldine, there are some questions for NITAU. If you could type in the Q&A responses to those questions so that we have our attendees, their questions answered, that would be very beautiful. And also, if I could have some of the panelists, Martin, answer some of the questions on security considerations that you have put in your respective organizations, that would also be great. Martin, Florence, Stephen, if you could do that. And one last question for Peter, and we call it a day. Peter, in maybe a minute, if you could respond to this question. As you mentioned, there's a lot of interconnectivity, so many entities talking to each other and sharing lots of data. What challenges are you seeing with government usage of data? Peter, if you're there, you could take up this question. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Like I said previously, as a tax collector, one of the key sources of information is the data that we receive, or we share, or we get from our partner agencies, both locally and internationally. But for just speaking on the government of Uganda case, we have seen, we collect information, let's say from KCCA, from NERA, from National Water, Lands, etc. But there seems to be a lack of standardization. And so it becomes very difficult to match the different data sets. And I see that as government, we need to work on that. So we need to do something about that. It will not just help URA, but the whole of government, and in many different ways. That's what I would have to share with the members here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Peter. And I just have one last comment from the attendees. This is to Nita, to be able to consider local government when it comes to digital transformations in terms of training. There's a call out here from the local government that they would really love to be involved in this digital agenda in terms of training. So ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure hosting you on this webinar. I hope we have taken quite a number of nuggets. I'll still request my panelists to respond to the questions so that you can see answers to them. So as we go out to embrace the bold digital government, as we embrace disruptive technologies, remember that there is more to that, and that we need to put into consideration key things that we look out. And we also must remember that digital transformation equals business transformation, and that the customer expectations will continue to rise. So innovation, continuous improvement must be key on all of our agenda. So allow me to say a very, very big thank you to our panelists from the different entities, to Peter from URA, to Martin from KCCA, to Stephen from NMS, and to Florence from the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development. It's been a pleasure hosting you. And so allow me land this plane this moment, and I wish you all a very good, festive season. Remember to stay well and to stay safe. God bless you and have a very good evening. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. You've been a good pilot. Thank you.
Thank you. Please remember to
thank you,
respond to some
Angela.
of the quick questions. Yeah.
You're going to pay for your